Next.js versus Remix. These are JavaScript frameworks that you need to use or learn when you're choosing to build a web application. Now, it's really important to pick one or the other because they are fully fledged frameworks. You won't choose both. You'll choose one. You'll choose just one. And you want to pick the right one because between the two, you've got Next.js, which is based on React. It's been around for a decade plus, and you're going to have a lot of stability there, but also a lot of baggage. Now, you look at Remix, which is a little newer. Remix is going to have a focus on developer experience. If you can leverage static site generation, then you're going to really like Next.js. Next.js is going to be a lot more powerful there. Better end user experience, and you look at Remix for the developer experience. So you are the one who are working on the project. If you know that you're going to be maintaining it going forward, 99% of the time spent on any project is going to be in the maintenance of that project. Now, Remix has the victory there from that perspective. There's a lot more to it when you're choosing the right web framework in order to build a web app, Remix or Next.js. If we're taking a look, let's compare the two. Now, what we want to look at mostly here is just to see what the key differentiators, the key strengths are between each of these frameworks. Let's look at Next.js first. The idea is Next.js is based entirely on React application. It's got a full end-to-end server-side, client-side framework that makes your life a lot easier. Also, being that it's based on React, a lot more developers are going to be aware of this framework and have used it before in the past. So if we're taking a look at the key features, we have server-side rendering, where Next.js is able to provide a better end-user experience. The more pre-rendered content that you can have from a server's perspective, the better SEO you get and the better end-user experience you get, because if you're constructing a lot of those contents on page for the end user, every user's browser is going to have to do that work, and that's a lot of extra work, slower experience, and it slows the user's computer down, so it's better to have that. What's even better, the best of all, is static site generation. Static site generation is where as much as possible is pre-rendered, bundled, and packaged and compressed into a payload that gets delivered to in-target devices. This is, if you can leverage that, always go that approach. You're going to have the best end user. The whole point is to give a user a really good experience. You want that user to be happy and delighted. And with server-side, static site generation, you're going to have the best possible experience. Now, there's a couple other good benefits here with React. We get client-side rendering or routing, where you get effortless client-side routing, allowing seamless navigation between pages without full page reloads. Now, that's really critical and key because that allows a better user experience, typically because you can click and the page will transition to the next page nearly instantly, and without having to fetch a lot more data. TypeScript, that's pretty standard, and then we also have API routes. I mean, it's sort of a good tie-in to a backend server API, which encompasses the Next.js framework altogether. So you kind of need this. If you're going to be using Next.js, it should have good API routes. Remix is the newest web framework to come to the scene when you're taking a look and comparing it to Next.js to figure out, should you choose Next.js or Remix when you're deploying your next-gen application on the web. Now, they're both based on React, and the good news is that Remix does have a more emphasis on just sort of keeping you in the server rendering mode, right? At server-side rendering. Now, you want that because it's going to give you the best overall prioritized fast delivery for page loads and SEO benefits. Now, I would say this is less valuable than a full static site generation, where you're going to get the best possible SEO and the best possible page load times from SSG. But server-side rendering as a nice middle ground. You also have powerful routing, which is necessary if you're building, a robust application on the web. You need to be able to fetch the data between the client, the web browser, and the server from data. We also have great data hooks as developer experience, just to make it really seamless when you're fetching data from the server or a cache or SEO from a client. Okay, so this helps improve overall performance by allowing you to fetch data from yourself, right? The local cache or the server, which is pretty powerful. It looks like it makes that seamless, though I do see that this has been made with Next.js as well. So I don't know if this is built-in authentication. Now, I would also say, Next.js has this too. So you can't really call that a powerful indication that Remix would be a good use case here. This is the big one, I would say. It should not be at number 5. I would say number 5, this should be number 1. I've seen and heard that the developer experience when working with Remix is better because you're working with some framework that was intended for the developer to have the best possible experience. Now, this is key and critical because when you're building web applications, 99% of the time, you're going to see that your time is spent on maintaining the application, adding new features, fixing bugs. So if you have a good developer experience, you're going to be able to maintain that more quickly, and you're going to have a better overall experience. And so this is where Remix really shines when you're comparing it to Next.js. Let's compare some of the key aspects between Next.js and Remix. These are web frameworks that you're going to be able to choose when you're building a web application. Now, it's critical to take a look at some of the more core features and capabilities between the two. Let's take a look here. Next.js for rendering strategy, they offer both server-side rendering and static site generation, while Remix is only going to be server-side rendering. The good news is that I would recommend immediately static site generation. You're going to have the best possible user experience. So I would say Next.js wins from that perspective. Routing, both of them offer really good routing and convenient fine-grained controls. Dynamic routing, nested routing, they're the same. Nobody wins in this case. And potentially maybe Remix, though, from a user developer experience perspective, I would say this round routing is a tie. Same for data fetching. Now, there are hooks on both sides. So if you're fetching data from the server or other APIs, you're going to have both are going to do well. They're both going to do just fine. So there's no big deal here between that. I wouldn't say there's a clear. Now we're looking at developer experience. Taking a quick poll around the internet, I see that folks tend to choose Remix from a developer experience perspective. Has a lot more focus on just ease of use, right? When you're building application features and UIs. And since it's primarily opinionated on server-side rendering, they're just going to take care of a lot of that optionality for you, which means that you don't have to worry about some of the boilerplate. However, you compare that with Next.js, and they still have a pretty good, easy use and a robust ecosystem. They have more documentation, they've been around longer, and if you're going to be choosing between the two, Remix is going to give you a happier developer experience, but Next.js has the capability of giving you a better end-user experience overall. So if you're optimizing for end-user experience, go with Next.js. You're going to have the best possible end-user experience, right? Your customers, they should have that. But if you're going for maybe it's an internal tool or, the developer experience for your team is just that much more important, Remix is the better choice. Just taking a quick peek at Remix documentation versus Next.js documentation, I do see that Next.js is going to look a lot more enterprisey, right? It's going to have almost basically everything that you're going to need if you're building a long-lived application that's going to be developed sort of maybe as a SaaS service, right? You're going to be offering a web front end that works on mobile and a desktop. You're going to want to choose Next.js overall because more developers use it, more developers like it. Next.js is going to be that much better, and it has everything that you need, including some of the performance needs from that perspective. Because guess what? If you can leverage static site generation, Next.js is also going to give you a good end user experience at the same time. So Next.js is really powerful. And now looking at Remix, we see a lot more simplicity. There's less overall, so you don't have to dive in as much and read through the docs. So you're going to see a better end user experience with Next.js, but with Remix, you're going to have a better developer experience. The internet has spoken comparing Remix or Next.js. This was just about 12 plus months ago that we saw a voting occur on Reddit if they're comparing which one would you choose, Next.js or Remix. Now, this kind of obviously almost had nearly 6 times more votes for Next.js. That's going to be because it's been out longer, more people know it, it's had more time to mature, stabilize, and it's been embedded into more projects so more developers know about it. If you're choosing between the two, usually if you're asking folks to vote, more people have not used Remix, so they wouldn't know to vote for it, right? Even though Remix is going to have a developer experience that I would say is a little bit easier than Next.js, you're going to see that more folks are going to choose Next.js. So, we see here that folks would say I would choose the stable one. That typically means the one that has been around longer, which is going to be Next.js in that case, right? So, and then we have someone else who came in here about earlier this year that said, after a year of using both of those system and large-scale products, we have Remix is going to be the winner. So this is someone who's had experience in both Remix and Next.js. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense because Remix has been targeted for your developer experience. You're going to have a better time as a developer managing and maintaining the project overall because it's simpler and it has very specific directives, right? You don't have a lot of options to pick from, which is good. You want something that just works, is off the shelf, and it provides you all the things you need to give a good overall product at the end. And so we see some of the points here is the error handling's better than Next.js. It's got some animation libraries. That's kind of neat. Live UI updates, a little bit easier. I see. All right. So there's a problem with Next.js. Like any other project, as you go bigger and longer, it's going to take longer. You can just bloat the product overall. It can get really bloated. That's not fair to say for Next.js because that kind of would be the same for any project, really. We see a deleted comment that's like, says Solid.js, just start using Solid because it's not on topic, right? Oh, this one didn't get deleted, and it says they'd rather use SvelteKit. That's interesting.